Hello and welcome to Self Talk. I'm Rachel Astarte. Today I have as my guest Ann Hince. When she was 19, she woke one morning to find her mother dead in her bathroom. And 20 years later, she was still suffering from that trauma. And she found a simple technique that helped her release these emotions. And that's a technique that she calls insight or inward sight. And now Ann is a spiritual teacher, a public speaker, and an author. Her book, A Pathway to Insight, details her journey and breaks down her insight technique. And thank you so much for being on Self Talk.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Great. So that's a lot of information just in your bio. So why don't we start with how you came to this work and a little bit about your background there.
Sure. Well, I had a lot of trauma in childhood. I mean, most of us do. Pretty much everyone does. I had two alcoholic parents. And as you mentioned, I did find my mother dead in the bathroom when I was 19. And I didn't realize how much I held on to that. I think most of us don't realize we're holding that trauma inside of us. So it wasn't until I was a stay-at-home mom with two young boys in my late 30s, and I went to a doctor's appointment just to check up. And he could tell that I was more stressed than I should be. And he asked me what my stress level was. And I told him it's an 8 out of 10. And I knew right away it was from that trauma when I was 19, because the tears were still so close to the surface. It didn't take me, I could just think about it and the tears were there. So he worked with me with the first technique that I used, which is called EFT, emotional freedom technique, or tapping. It's very well known these days.
Yes.
And it was so powerful. And I walked away from that appointment being able to tell the story of her death with no emotions arising.
Wow.
And it felt magical to me at the time. So I tried it out. I tried it out on my cat that needed daily saline shots. And my hand would shake so much that first time I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it. So I thought, okay, this is a good test. So I tapped about my fear of hurting my cat, my fear of injections. And the next time I did it, it just slid right in.
Wow.
So something had really shifted. So then I started using it every day. I started using it. I find myself thinking a thought that had emotions attached to it, and I would tap about it. And then I wanted more because I could tell it was making a difference. So I wrote down all the memories I could think of that had emotions attached, all the traumas, everything from childhood. And I went through them one each night. I spent about an hour to an hour and a half tapping each night.
Wow.
And I found my mind becoming quieter. And what I realized after a while is that the voices that had been in my head, the words that I use to criticize myself and criticize other people, which I hated doing, but it happened automatically. Those words were my dad's words that I had been programmed. I had absorbed them in childhood and I was just replaying them.
Right.
And it was so nice. It almost felt like I was living in a different reality when those words had gone out of my mind. It was so nice.
Wow. Wow.
So I kept going. When I started this process, I didn't know how I felt. If someone asked me how I felt, I would just say, I'm fine, and just let it go. But because I didn't know. So this process of working through what could be called shadows or memories or darkness inside, whatever you want to call it, it started to expand my awareness. So to begin with, I was only aware of the words or of the things that had happened, but then I became aware of my emotions that had been attached to those things that happened. And then I became aware of the physical sensations underneath the emotions. Right? So when we have a feeling like fear, there's actually physical sensations inside of us that we then just label with the word fear, the emotion fear.
That's right.
So when I became aware of those, I actually used a different technique that I call feeling your feelings, where I would actually hold myself like a statue, even stop breathing. Once I had become aware of this emotion inside my body, I wanted to feel it because I've been suppressing it for decades. I wanted to actually feel it and allow it to express itself, to actually release. And I found that it would release from the body. I'd need to take a deep breath. I'd think the thought again, and it had shifted. So then I would think the thought again and again and again, and keep doing it with the same thought until there was no emotion left. And then I would go on with my day and then come up with something else and do the same thing. And then I started doing it with collective trauma. So I would think about the big events, which still affect us, right? 9/11 affected
Right.
almost everyone in the world. So I bring that thought to mind, feel those feelings, and let them pass through out of my body.
Mm.
And at some point during this process, I realized I could actually keep my awareness inside my body once the emotion, once physical sensations had left.
Mm.
And then I was at a deeper level. Now I'm aware inside my body. And then I started doing the same thing. I could move my awareness around and hold my awareness on tension inside,
Right.
allow it to be. So I'm doing the same thing on the inside that I was doing on the outside, allow it to be, and it would shift and it would dissipate.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, I was able to put my awareness inside my head. And now I could actually feel it release and hear it release. And it sounds like old fabric ripping.
Wow.
And I realized that it must be the connective tissue, right? The fascia in the body, that I'm letting go of these hooks, these blockages in the connective tissue. And I just recently had some x-rays taken of my head, and I had comparison ones from 2013. And to see the physical changes that I kind of know have been happening, but to actually see them on an x-ray, it just blew my mind, because I didn't know we could do this with our focused awareness.
Yeah.
So that's where I am today.
That's amazing. I'll definitely make sure that I think you sent me those x-rays, right? You emailed those to me, and I'll share those with the listeners as well. Certainly in the video version, but maybe I can attach them to when I share this. That's amazing. Oh, so much to cover now. No, that's so beautiful. And what really speaks to me, and I'm sure to the listeners too, is the idea of our body housing the feelings, right? And because we don't think our feelings, we feel our feelings. That's where they are, that's, and the whole idea of, our guts, like we refer to our feelings in terms of our bodies all the time. I have butterflies in my stomach, or what's my gut reaction to this, or whatever it is, right? So that we are constantly in communication with our bodies, through the polyvagal nervous system, through every the neuropeptides that are being transmitted back and forth. So that makes perfect sense, that and what I think is so beautiful about your story is that you came to it so organically, to turn inward to a place that might not have felt very comfortable. It takes a lot of bravery to sit down. Tapping is amazing, but to actually sit down with your emotions and not be afraid of feeling them.
Right. I can't say I was always not afraid, right? I was.
You did
to begin with.
My point. Of
right.
course, it makes perfect. Nobody wants the icky feelings,
Right.
So I wonder if you could briefly speak to that for the listeners, about how to push through the uncomfortableness of sitting in pain or discomfort or anger or fear or grief or rage or whatever it is.
Right. I mean, and I would say what you want to do is to experience it. You can experience it with things that aren't as painful to begin with. Maybe you're afraid of, a small fear, and you can just feel that and work with that and let it go. Because I found that once I'd done it a few times and I got to the other side, I realized that that's where the freedom is. We hear that a lot. The freedom is on the other side. It is. And once you've experienced it a few times, you come to realize that all it is stored energy. It's just stuck energy in the body. And once you let it go, it's gone.
Right. And that's pretty amazing. It's like you have to walk through the storm. You really do. And know that it will end on the other side. So the other part that I thought was so amazing and so important, since, this is a show called Self-Talk, was realizing that the negative self-talk in your mind was actually your father's voice. How did you come to that realization?
I had to get beyond, like we just talked about, I had to get to the point that he was no longer there before I could look back and say, oh, that was my dad's voice. So it's just a process of awakening, of expansion of awareness. And even now that I can get on the inside, we hear about the darkness and the lightness. What I'm working with on the inside, I can sense light and darkness on the inside, and I can sense tension. So I hold my awareness on the tension, and when it dissipates, I realize that underneath it was light. And then I can realize, oh, what I just released was dark. But when I'm actually involved in it, when I'm feeling that tension, I don't feel the darkness.
Right.
So I have to get beyond it in order to look back and see that it was the darkness there. So it's just a question of becoming aware, which is not always the easiest thing to do, right? To really grab hold of the thought that you're thinking or the emotion that you're thinking. And actually, this whole process is about accepting that. But to actually find what your truth is right in this moment is difficult because we suppress it.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a practice then, and getting more and more used to doing that so that you're not, so that you're better able to bring that awareness no matter what comes up. Right. And dealing with the childhood wounding is certainly helpful. I always say it's like a domino effect. Once you deal with the childhood wounding and you're healing it through the body, through the mind, through the spirit, then a lot of the issues that we have as adults seem to melt away, don't they?
They do, because we don't realize how much that programming in childhood affects us, and it totally affects us all the time. We're just not aware of it. Yes. So that process of becoming aware, I worked with, I had a friend the other day who was doing tapping with me, and she said she felt like a slob. But there was so much resistance to actually accepting that she felt like a slob, right? So because we don't want to feel that. Right. So we suppress it. It's like, oh, I'm not a slob, or we'll tell people, you're not a slob. But once you actually accept it, so I would have tapped, and I encouraged her to, I am a slob, right? Can I be okay with the fact that I am a slob? No, she couldn't. And that's okay. That's where she was right now. No, I can't be okay with the fact that I think I'm a slob, right? So there's such subtle variation in there. But when she could get to the place where she could tap and accept, okay, I think I'm a slob, and that's okay, then the power goes out of the word slob.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then we live in a different world. Once the power from the words, the memories from the words that we use, once that is gone, we're actually much more in peace.
Yeah, I love that approach too, because it's, there's a fearlessness in dealing with the fear, you know what I mean? And that there really is nothing to be afraid of. These are words that have meant something, as you said, during the, the patterning growing up, but we're not children anymore, and we need new tools to negotiate the world that we're actually in. Our childhood traumatized self did what they could to help us survive this far. So great, you know what I mean? But now we don't need that kind of programming anymore. And so it's a beautiful method.
We have to want to change though, right?
Yes. And that's a really important topic too, which would be a great little shift here is, I have patients all the time who say, I know what needs to be changed. I don't know how to do it. And then they say, okay, so here are some tools, but they don't do it. Right. So what, if you could speak a little bit to that wanting to do it, what happens for you with people you work with or with yourself? Where's that threshold, I guess, of just making the change?
Well, I really, really wanted to change. I really wanted my mind to be different because I was just full of fear all the time. And I needed to change. So one of the things that really helped me is thinking about the law of attraction. So I don't think of it in the way a lot of society thinks about it. I think about it, it's working all the time, every second of every day. I'm emitting a signal and I'm getting things back to me based on that signal. So then I would start to ask myself, okay, so how am I feeling right now? Because do I want to feel this way again in the future? And if I don't, then I'm going to work with it right now. What can I do right now? I can tap, or I can feel those feelings, or I can just try and relax a little bit more, because if I'm a little more relaxed, then that's the signal I'm putting out, and I'm getting something more relaxed back to me in the future. Yes. So I started using that throughout the day. I'd catch myself. It's like, okay, how am I feeling right now? And just work with that on an ongoing basis. So that's something that really helped me, that might help other people too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really really puts the focus on it. You will change when you're ready to change, when you need to change, when staying the way you are is not acceptable anymore. You know, or the way that I put it is when you finish learning this lesson, right? So when you finish learning the lesson of suffering, you'll shift. You know, and sometimes we need to learn a little more from that suffering, or be in that pain for a little longer, for whatever reason. When it's time for you to do it, there will be no other option, right? And right. So let's talk about the law of attraction again for a second, because this is a this is a topic that my listeners know gets my dander up. This idea of manifesting something from outside of yourself, right? So what I'm hearing from you, I like this idea of you are emitting an energy, and that energy is being reflected back to you. You are working in conjunction with the energy around you. I think I understand that, right?
Yes, totally.
That is what the law of attraction really is. It's not about having the right thoughts so that you get rewarded for them. That's putting you and the universe separate, and we're not, right? You know, or God, or whatever you want to call it, great mystery creation. But we are actually constantly working in conjunction with the world around us, right? And so the idea of what we see, the way we see the world is the way the world appears to us, right? That's physics, you know? So so I love this idea. And one of the questions might be in a follow-up to that would be, how can we change that energetic signal to get a different result in our life?
Right. So there's a lot there. And yes, I think we are a one big signal. Everything about us is the signal. We're emitting that signal, and we're getting things based back on that signal. And it makes sense, right? When you think about it, you change your hair, you're going to get different responses from people outside. If you're really tall or really short or really large or small, you're going to get a reflection of that back from outside of you. Mm-hmm. Now, I think the main part of our signal is that tension that we hold inside of us in our connective tissue from all our past. Mm. And that's what came to me. That's what I realized, because I never felt that great. So I was getting things back. Nothing changed. And I wanted something to change. So I realized I had to change my base signal. So that's when I started working with EFT, because it does change that tension on the inside. So all these layers of awareness change that base signal on the inside. And then it changes what we get back from the outside. Now, I do not agree with positive thinking. I think positive thinking is, while it's nice to have positive thoughts, when we try to think something positive, it means we're not accepting, or we're suppressing the actual thought that is there.
Absolutely right. Yep. I agree.
Right. So if we accept that, if we find it, that's can be hard. If we find the actual thought that's there that we're trying to suppress, and we work with that, we either tap, or we feel the feelings, whatever we do with that thought, then we let that energy go. Underneath, we are positive. Yeah. We are at peace. Light is there. So we actually don't need to try to think positive thoughts. We just need to let go of the darkness or the negative, right? Whatever.
Or let it move its way through you. Because, you know, if you look at it from, let's say, a Jungian perspective, right? The light and the shadow, they're the same. You know what I'm saying? We have to look at them equally. There's no right or wrong. If we embrace all that we are, then, and I think this is what you're speaking to, then, and you're working with it as opposed to trying to shove it away or compartmentalize it, then it's that darkness, I'm putting air quotes around darkness, is being brought into the light anyway and absorbs that light, because now it's not this dark, scary thing that we have to shove away. It's something that we accept in ourselves, and in a more neutral way. Oh, okay, I do have homicidal thoughts. Huh, interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember tapping. I tapped for like probably a couple of hours total about I hate myself. I got to the place where I realized that I did. And then I just tapped to accept it. And once I could accept it, it has no power over me anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a really good place to get to. Now, I do think you can use the law of attraction if you wanted to maybe bring something in your life. But to do that, you've got to get rid of a lot of the resistance to where you are now, the resistance to the thing you want, because if there wasn't any resistance, you would already have it.
Yeah.
And the resistance to the process. There's a lot of resistance in us to things that we don't have yet. Yes. But that's all the feeling inside of us. You're still working with the same process. You're letting go of that tension inside of you around words and things.
Yes, exactly. And I love that, the facing of it, right? So that you're not afraid, and you're not afraid of even the scary parts of yourself.
Right.
So for you personally, what changes have you noticed in your life?
Oh, all sorts. One of the key things I wanted to become a calm mother. I would see all these other mothers at school that seemed like they were so calm, and I wanted that. So when someone said the same thing to me, that they wanted to be as calm as I was, I realized, okay, something's changed here. So that was really nice. And yeah, things are so calm. Things just flow. Things just happen. All these serendipities happen. Everything is just so much calmer. And I think you use the word satisfying in your early podcasts that I listened to. And satisfaction is a word that I love, right? I feel so peaceful and satisfied with life, right? I love doing this deep release work. It's nothing I'd rather do. It feels really good to release deep tension that's been stored for decades.
Yeah.
So just happy and light. The enlightenment, I believe, is a process, right? On the inside, I am seeing more light, but there's also, I feel lighter, right? I used to feel like I weighed so much, like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, right? I think a lot of us feel that way. And to have that released, I just feel light.
Yeah.
And there's many other things too. Yeah.
No, that's a good list so far, but yeah. And there's this adventure sense that I get to it, that from what you're saying, that this great adventure of getting in there and working with the truth of the stuff, of the ugly bits as well as the positive bits, and being able to just fearlessly, I keep using the word fearless, but it's really almost a heroic act to get in there and really say, all right, bring it on. Like, I'm not afraid of tapping on anything. I'll tap on that. I tap it. Yeah, I love it.
Right. Well, I will actually listen. There was a period of time where I stopped watching the news or listening to the news. I will actually listen to it now because I want to know what triggers me. Because if I find something that triggers me, I have something to work with. So I will do that now. One of the other things I wanted to say just on what you said right then is having new thoughts that you've never had before. That is fun. And the first time that happened, it was just wild. It's like, oh,
what's an
my
example
goodness.
of a new thought?
Gosh, I'm so used to them now. Well, I guess even the thoughts of being on a podcast, right?
Oh, okay.
That would not have occurred to me. The idea that we could potentially live for hundreds of years, that is, I believe, a reality that can happen. It's like, oh gosh, I didn't think about that before. I'd only ever heard of the 120 years potential, but with some of the things I know now from inside, I do feel those are a reality.
Wow, amazing. Right. What an adventure. Just want to let that sit for a second and settle in. Yeah, beautiful. So, but one question I'd love to ask too is, because you mentioned this earlier and we kind of glossed by it, and I want to come back to it, that it isn't just about ourselves, right? It's about, it's not just about our future. How do we work with our community or the planet or, humanity as a whole with this insight method?
Well, I do think it's something that we all can do. What I don't know at this point, because it's a holographic universe, does it just take one person to do all this work? And then does it, one person is in everyone else? Or do we all need to do it? Or some set of us need to do it? That's what I don't know. But we can all work with our emotions, right? At this point in time, we are so divided. And it doesn't matter what side of any issue we're on, we're feeling emotions around it. We're feeling emotions around the subject itself, and we're feeling emotions around the other side, right? The people on the other side. So if we all worked on our own feelings of frustration, anger, whatever it is we're feeling, and we let them go, then we can come together in peace in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important work that we can all do. If we do it on ourselves first, then that's what we're going to attract. If we're in peace ourselves, we're going to attract peace. So
yeah, beautiful. That's a great answer. So how can people find you, Ann?
Multiple ways. I have a website, annhince.com. I have a public Facebook page that I enjoy interacting with people on. And I have a YouTube channel where I'm sharing some of my story in a little bit more depth, and some information demos on how to do the EFT and the feelings are on there.
Beautiful. And where can people find your book?
It's available on Amazon, or you can ask your local bookstore to order it for you.
Okay, great. And the book, again, is A Pathway to Insight. Ann Hince, thank you so much for being on Self Talk.
Thank you. It's been great.